Over the past year, U.S. tech firms have laid off hundreds of thousands of workers as the impact of the global economic slowdown and rising interest rates have brought some of Silicon Valley's high-flying companies down to earth. Along with the shocking collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank, an important lender to tech startups, there is growing concern that it will be felt across the tech landscape globally. This is CNA Correspondent. Silicon Valley is the place where tech dreams become reality. Entrepreneurs from around the world have come here for years, looking for their own pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
On Friday,
but it's been a rough year for U.S. tech.
The FDIC took control of Silicon Valley Bank's assets.
Federal regulators have had to rescue Silicon Valley Bank, an important player in the tech ecosystem. Big names like Google, Meta, and many others have laid off tens of thousands of employees. We set out on a journey through the San Francisco Bay Area, the tech-heavy region that is home to Silicon Valley, to try and figure out just how bad things really are.
A lot of companies became bloated over the last 3 years, for some good reason, because we saw a lot of spiking demand, of course, as we all had to sequester at home.
When that demand tapered off, tech firms started laying people off in droves. According to the site Layoffs.fyi, around 150,000 people were laid off in the first quarter of this year, accelerating a trend that began in the second half of 2022. Amy, a 21-year-old software engineer, moved to Silicon Valley in September to work at Meta, where she'd already completed 2 internships. But just 2 months later, she was one of around 11,000 people to lose their jobs in the company's first ever mass layoffs.
I couldn't sleep at all that night, checked my phone, and found out that I was affected, I was laid off. And it was like really, really heartbreaking in the moment, because it was sort of grieving a loss of what I had come here to do, what I had planned my life sort of on being like here.
I grew up just down the street.
But well, for those in her generation, layoffs may be a new thing. The history of Silicon Valley is filled with plenty of ups and downs.
If you want to see where the personal computer revolution, a multi-trillion-dollar industry now, began, it's in that garage right there.
Journalist and Silicon Valley native Mike Malone has seen it all, from the birth of the tech industry to the downturns of 2000 and 2008.
I think a lot of younger people think this is the way it's always been and always will be, and it's not. Because one of the lessons of the Valley is they'll give you anything you want to hire you during busy times, but during hard times, a lot of those perks disappear, and eventually you disappear too. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to get hired back. It doesn't mean if you catch the wave of the next boom, you're not going to become fabulously wealthy and famous and powerful and all that. It's just that you're not guaranteed anything in this town.
One thing Silicon Valley still does have is its world-changing reputation and proximity to some of the biggest venture capitalists on the planet.
How's it going?
That's what brought Pakistani entrepreneur Munir Usman here in 2015. His startup, Code Interview, builds tools to help tech firms streamline their hiring process.
I knew that if we want to scale this company, we have to be there. Yeah. So that's why I moved here to Silicon Valley. And also it's just a different environment, which is very unique. Running a company is a very lonely job. You face issues and challenges which are not common to other people. So you want to be a part of community of founders and customers and investors who are going through the same struggle.
He says he's managed to avoid layoffs so far by watching costs closely. But like many of his peers, he had to scramble to manage the money he had in Silicon Valley Bank. The uncertainty in the tech industry is affecting other areas of the local economy as well. Commercial real estate in San Francisco was already suffering due to the coronavirus pandemic. Now it faces more challenges, with tech firms reducing their headcounts and looking to cut costs. The city's office vacancy rate ended last year at close to 28%. That's around 7 times higher than it was in 2019, when big tech seemed unstoppable.
You know, the big tech players had their choice and could take control of buildings and spaces. They had the money, they had the financing, they had the profits. It didn't matter to them. They would pay $150 a square foot if that's what it took, just so that they could keep their employees in one place, they could keep them happy.
For a region whose fortunes have been tied to tech for several decades, it's a reminder that things can and do change. But for all the doom and gloom, few are writing off Silicon Valley just yet.
In 2000, when the dot-com bubble burst, we lost about something like 25% of all tech labor. We're nowhere near that at the moment. I think part of that also has to do with the fact that tech is now woven through almost every other industry. I mean, name anything, even things like agriculture, for instance, right? We just mentioned healthcare tech or health tech, edutech. Everything is now pervaded with technology. And so that means there is more demand throughout the economy for tech product. There's also more demand for tech talent.
Amy has already found another job at a healthcare company.
I think a lot of people take these layoffs when they're laid off as a personal failing, but it really is more just these consulting companies coming in and judging people based on these larger metrics and really just letting people go in swaths. And everyone who made it to these places are very qualified, and I'm hoping that these people don't give up in that sense, because they made it where they were and they will continue to make it even if a lot of those big companies are not hiring. I think a lot of people take their position at a big company to be their self-worth, and maybe this can help change that.
Despite the layoffs, the U.S.'s big tech firms remain among the world's most valuable companies. They can use those coffers to invest heavily in things like artificial intelligence that could shape the coming decades. But with markets rewarding cost-cutting, especially with interest rates high, another threat to workers, this time from AI itself, may be on the horizon.
Milan is Italy's financial hub, one of the fashion capitals of the world, and we're starting our whistle-stop tour of Europe's tech sector here too. We'll travel the length and breadth of this continent, finding out how different places are trying to achieve the same goals, surviving recent volatility in the sector, and in the long run, trying to compete with the giants of Silicon Valley. And on our journey around Europe, we'll find out how tech entrepreneurs are popping up in unlikely places. About a 45-minute metro ride from Milan's historic centre is Mind, or the Milano Innovation District. Originally the site of the 2015 World Expo, it's now being transformed into a hub for science, tech and research.
We're trying to create a piece of city within the city where innovation is at core, but at an urban scale.
Stefano Menini is the project director for Lend-Lease, the real estate firm driving this partnership between the public and the private sectors. While he's enthusiastic about Mind, he accepts it can't just close a door on the usual frustrations of doing business in Italy.
The startup that survived despite the difficult bureaucratic and sometimes clumsy legal framework are the ones that are there to thrive. I can see that by having worked outside of Italy and bringing my experience, and this is common to many Italians abroad, we thrive in an uncertain scenario.
Mind's backers hope to fill this vast site with 60,000 people by 2032. But if you visit right now, you can be left wondering where to find all the future innovators. In terms of capital invested, Milan just scrapes into Europe's top 10 tech hubs. At number 9, Italy's financial capital is still behind Helsinki and Zurich, let alone powerhouses like London and Paris.
There is an entrepreneurial spirit in Italy. There always has been. Now we need to take it to the next level.
Noah Segre, a veteran of Israel's startup scene before she came to Italy, says the coronavirus pandemic could end up being an unexpected turning point.
Italy, was one of the first countries, together with China, to be hit from this pandemic, which forced Italians in the government, but also citizens and also corporates, to understand that innovation is now a must. You have to rely on digital tools. You can't not do it. And the fact that Italy was able to react fast to these things that came with the pandemic kind of showed the world that you can invest in Italian technology because it does work.
About 900 kilometers north of Milan, the Belgian city of Leuven is home to another group of tech pioneers. But the developers at One Bonsai aren't using bricks and mortar, they're building virtual worlds. The company's co-founder, Dimitri Pirnet, sees extraordinary potential in the metaverse, a concept championed by Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg in recent years.
Some people refer to the metaverse as the eighth continent, meaning that it's going to be a place where people can live and exist, own things, buy things, meet people, have relationships with, in a fully digital environment.
One Bonsai has built a roster of clients, including the Belgian military and supermarket chains, all using VR to train their staff.
So what we see here is a person completely autonomously performing a fire exercise. So he is going through different kinds of scenarios for different kinds of industries. We make the environment very realistic by using input from our customers. So we make 3 kinds of fires in every environment, and we place them in very realistic locations.
Today, we're going to talk about the metaverse.
Meta's Reality Labs division lost almost $14 billion in 2022, leading to skepticism from investors about the long-term profitability of Zuckerberg's big bet on virtual reality. One Bonsai's team says recent layoffs by big tech firms have made clients worry about the future of the metaverse, but they're not seeing any slowdown in demand.
The use cases that we build stay as relevant as they were before. Our clients still need our help in order to bring them to the metaverse. They need our help to solve their training challenges that they are facing today. All of these business applications on our side remain, if I may say, untouched.
They say investors in Europe do, however, have a very different approach to their counterparts in Silicon Valley, wanting to see proof of sales early in a startup's lifespan.
This is something that that I believe at least is slowing down the European ecosystem, because not everything can be done, not everything can be built with immediate sales, immediate return, basically.
Since the 2016 Brexit vote, the UK has been extricating itself from that European ecosystem, with the government pledging to make London a tech superpower on its own. At the same time, cities like Paris and Amsterdam have been vying to take London's crown as Europe's financial and tech hub for good. The recent collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, whose British subsidiary was rescued by HSBC, was a narrow escape for the UK tech sector.
Well, I think it was pretty amazing that so many of what an incredibly important area of the economy actually banked with one bank. And that fact that risk exposure, not only for the bank itself to that single segment, but also for the companies themselves. I think it emphasizes the importance of public markets and the fact it is how vital it is to get finance to these businesses in a more effective way.
There's a cold reality facing tech companies across Europe, though. It's getting much harder to raise cash in the current environment. So, as a result, the limitless ambition so often associated with the tech sector might have to be reined in.
It's a rough time for tech employees globally as the biggest companies in the sector are laying people off en masse. In India alone, tens of thousands of jobs have been lost. But India's booming startup ecosystem is hungry for fresh talent. And that's why now it's becoming a beacon of hope for many.
Yash Agrawal was let go from Twitter in December, along with nearly all his India colleagues. His policy, communication and philanthropy team were among the first to face the axe.
What is this? I used to organize this twice a year. Twitter for Good day.
Yash says Twitter is still close to his heart, even though many of his colleagues are facing serious challenges after being fired with only a few hours' notice.
There were people who were expecting, a lot of them definitely must have had EMIs or whatever, like basically, bills to pay, point being. And so definitely that was a source of concern, especially given the macroeconomic climate we are in right now, right, where it's just layoffs.
After several tech giants, including Amazon, Meta and Microsoft, fired thousands in India, Yash isn't interested in working with big tech for now. He's hoping to build on his experience at Twitter to set up a policy consulting firm. The mass layoffs haven't only changed Yash's career trajectory, they're also altering the career paths of young engineering graduates.
Here at the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi, students are among the most sought-after tech talent in the country. Admission here is difficult, and once the students are in, they are put through a rigorous academic curriculum. And that has meant that year after year, big US tech companies flock to this campus to hire students right out of college.
But finding a job at a big tech company isn't a walk in the park anymore. A job offer from an American company has for long been considered a badge of honor in the IT circle. But struggling with weak post-pandemic demand, US companies are being careful with spending money on new hires.
So the US-based tech companies, they are on a conservative hiring sprees. Many of them did turn up, but they did not pick the numbers that they usually would have.
But that doesn't mean the IIT students are short of job offers. Instead, big tech is being replaced by Indian tech startups looking for highly skilled talent.
It may be a startup based out of India that would be working in, let us say, AI or machine learning. And that is giving a very nice and meaty role as well. So it sort of makes up.
With more than 11,000 startups, this city is best placed to absorb new and old tech talent.
I am in India's Silicon Valley, Bangalore. This city has the highest concentration of startups than anywhere else in India. And now these companies are looking to tap into the talent pool that has now become available as a result of the mass layoffs in American companies.
Twitter's India-based rival Coup is one of them. While Twitter has nearly shut down its India operation, Coup has grown to 50 million users in just 3 years. It is also a micro-blogging platform, but focuses on vernacular language users.
So when we started off, we wanted to make sure that people who don't know English, who speak languages, have a voice on the internet, right? And we wanted this brand to also be emotional.
Coup is set to expand rapidly as it targets more than 300 million local language users, and hiring top talent is crucial to power that growth. Those who've worked at Twitter could be a perfect fit.
Sure, there are engineers, product guys who have probably solved at scale some of the problems that we are trying to solve as well. So, we will dip as long as the culture match happens.
The startup culture is all about the hustle. But hiring experts say the philosophy of moving fast and breaking things could hit a roadblock as funding from investors is drying up. And that could force startups to conserve cash, meaning their demand for talent could also dip like the rest of the tech world.
And what you can see here is what used to be a peak last year, Jan 22nd, of about 273,000 jobs, has dropped by about 59% to close to about 112,000 jobs.
Still, industry insiders say the low cost of skilled labor and abundance of tech talent in India is attractive to foreign companies. This means the demand could pick up again, even though things may look bleak in the short term.
The pressure this year we have in the market, companies will continue to invest in freshers, and that market will continuously be there. In the movement for India to move from 6 to 10 million IT workforce, this pool that is graduating every year, almost 1 million workers, are a crucial supply for India to go.
With more layoffs at big tech likely this year, experts say things could get worse before they get better. And the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, the largest vendor in the startup ecosystem, is likely to hit the Indian startup scenario too, causing a lot of uncertainty in the tech sector.